Well, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Tuesday Motivation and Conversation. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing tonight. It's going to be talking about finding clarity. And this, as the title says, finding clarity leads to prosperity on whatever level that you may be on. So I want to, first of all, just give a shout out to my co-laborers from this past weekend, the Visionary Voices Impact Seminar, Empowerment Circle Impact Seminar. It was a phenomenal event, so engaging, so impactful, and people walked away with some really amazing information and some challenges, as well as changes for life. And that's what it's all about. When we come together, it's all about taking the opportunity to share the things that, number one, have been an experience for us to go to another place or another level in our life and reach goals, accomplish things, and then take that information that and that experience that we've had and then share that with somebody else. And so that is basically what happened this past weekend. We took those combined experiences and we shared those with persons, and they were able to connect. Things resonated with people on various levels. So, shout out to my co laborers from that event. And so it was such an amazing, amazing time. And it's always good to meet new people and interact, engage, and learn how people are processing things in different ways. And then we all learn from each other. So it was an amazing event. So definitely be on the lookout for the next Empowerment Circle Impact Seminar because there will be another one coming up sometime soon. So definitely keep watch out for that. So tonight I just kind of want to talk about in the midst of, our event that took place this past weekend. There were a lot of things that came to mind in the process of experiencing um, the topic, of course, that I talked about, which was clarity, but listening to the mindfulness of Tierney, who talked about that whole process and took us through a mini mindfulness exercise. And we had health and wellness, and then we had confidence. And of course, I always lead with this. It's important for us to have clarity because when we get clarity, we gain confidence. And when we get confident, we communicate better. And when we communicate better, we collaborate better. And so I always want to share that because I really want you to think about the trajectory of that syncopation of elements for life. And it's important, number one of the things I talked about last week was personal clarity and professional clarity. And it's so important to intertwine the two, but it's super important to gain that clarity for yourself before you can move forward. And once we do that, it helps us to continue to be progressive. It helps us to continue to perform. It helps us to continue to prosper because it helps us to prepare. And in order to have prosperity, there has to be preparation. And that means that we have to be prepared with our abilities. We have to be prepared with our um, level of decision making. We have to be prepared in the sense that we know who we are and what it is we're to do and who it is we are to serve. And so it's so important that you find out who you are, and that begins with clarity. And there's just some basic elements I want to kind of just, toss in as I'm still talking about the self-work framework, because that self-work framework is the framework that is going to be the catalyst for helping you to get clear among some of these other practical things. And so intertwined in, the process of the self-work framework, which is there are five elements to the self work framework. So that's self reflection, self awareness, self knowledge, self discipline, and self leadership. And so when we take ourselves through those five steps and we gain more clarity as we go through the process, and it has to start with the self reflection because if we don't confront some of the things, if we don't challenge ourselves in some of the areas, if we don't deal with some of the traumas, if we don't take the opportunity to find out about the areas that we have leaks, the areas we have opportunities, we will never get to the next place. We will never grow to the next level. And so it's so important that we take the time to understand who we are. So a few things I'm going to cover tonight, and then I may have to talk through those other things next week. But we'll get we'll get as far as we can in my time with you tonight. Of course, these sessions are not intended to be lengthy unless, of course, I have a guest on. So I try to stay true to that because it's already late evening. Try to give people the opportunity to get settled and that kind of thing, and maybe you can jump on as you're winding down or just listen in. So number one, I want to talk about, and this was something, that I shared during my presentation this past weekend, and that is we have to know what our core values are. And sometimes I think we get away from zeroing in on that and really making sure that that's a staple in our heart because we get so consumed with doing so many other things. But we have to determine what are the things that are fundamentally important to you. You have to identify those fundamental things, those fundamental principles that are important to you. For example, is it integrity? Is it your freedom? Is it community? Some people have an aspiration for community. That's their heart. That's where they are. Growth, security, learning, leadership. What are love? What are your core values? Because these are the things that serve as your compass. This is what helps you to stay on track when you're making decisions, when you are collaborating with others, when you are anticipating taking steps to do something in your business or in your life, is these things that help to steer you and make sure that you stay on track. And we hear these terms of moral compasses and that kind of thing. Not only that, but our spirit is also a part of that process. And so you have to take the opportunity to determine, do I know what my core values are? Do I know what my core values are? And those values should steer you, guide you. Those are the things that help to align you with yourself, align you with your life, align you with your spirit, and align you for your assignment, whatever that may be. And so it's important that those pieces are in place. I talk about the A game, and the A game is a framework for assignment, alignment, agreement, and attention. So we have to first know what our assignment is. What is it that we're supposed to be doing? What's our call? What's our purpose? Right? What is it that we're supposed to be doing or you feel drawn to do? That's your assignment. Then you have to be in alignment with that assignment, right? Then once you're in alignment with it, you have to be in agreement. This is what I want to do. This is what I desire to do. This is the thing I'm called to do. And then you have to give attention to it. Because if you don't give attention to it, then that assignment doesn't go forward and then it doesn't impact the people it's supposed to impact. So here again, all of that is a part of knowing your core values. What is it that you stand on? What is the thing that drives you? What is the thing that balances your heart? When you are out on a ledge, what is the thing that you think about? Is that family? Is that friends? What is it your faith? Is it, family, faith, friends, or family, faith, finance? Some people's core values are three, some are five, but whatever those core values are, and I would encourage you to really find out what those things are because those are the things that really help you to stay centered, and that is your core values. Then, secondly, this whole mindfulness piece. So this is where you have to take the opportunity, and it's the mindfulness and the self-reflection that go together. You have to do this self-reflection. So, during, the example that we were given over the course of the weekend, it was taking the time to really, number one, settle your mind. Take some time to just properly breathe. That was a word all by itself. That whole thing about not even breathing properly. Sometimes we're just walking around every day and we're not even breathing properly, you know. And so that's a whole nother conversation. I think I'm gonna have to have our own to just talk about that. Because I thought that was really, really, really important because there are little things that we miss. As they say, the small foxes are the ones, the little foxes spoil the vine. I digress. So back to self-reflection. It's all about mindful reflection, practicing mindful reflection. So that self-reflection is so important. Now, for some of us, I know our days are busy. We have a lot going on. So we may not be able to do, you know, 30 minutes in the morning and journal and go through what we've journaled and just kind of highlight things. But you need to make a point once or twice a week. You need to do that in depth. Now, in depth, I'm talking 30 minutes or more. If you can do an hour, that would be amazing, but at least 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes. But every day, you should take at least 5 minutes to just take a minute and clear your head, breathe, woosah, deep breaths in, let it out, that kind of thing. But you need to have some deep meditation at least a couple of times a week, at minimum. More than that, if you can do it. Every morning is a meditation time period. So when it's time for, to get my coffee and all that stuff, before I kind of get into that, there's music, there's just time of relaxing my mind and getting my day started. I already know what my agenda is going to be. So that way, and what happens when I do that is whenever something happens, because something's going to happen every day, that's not going to be a part of your agenda. Something's going to happen every day that you didn't plan for, because that's how life works. But when you have settled your mind, you're clear, your mind is clear, you've taken the time to really establish, your space, you've done some mindful reflection, mindful meditation. When the pivot time comes, because it will come, you will be able to pivot with clarity. And you'll be able to make a decision without being um, really hasty. You can take the opportunity and you don't have to have a knee jerk reaction. And you can think about what you're going to do and how you need to do it, and then you can respond appropriately. But when we jump up and we're rushing and we're running and da 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 da, we're already frustrated. We're already out of sync, right? And so when we start our day, the least thing that goes wrong, we often don't respond correctly because we're already off the rails. And I don't mean that, you are ugly, nasty, and all of that. But at the end of the day, sometimes that is the case. But at the end of the day, what doesn't happen is you don't take the time to really make a good decision about a response, about a task, about spending, or whatever the case may be, because we didn't take the time to really settle ourselves before we started our day. So it's important to observe yourself for the day, just kind of feel yourself out, how you're feeling, you feel good, are there any things that you need to really address, think about, prepare for the day? It's something simple as a hangnail. If you got a hangnail and you don't have the time to just properly file it and clip it and shape it up and all of that, grab your tools right quick, or make sure that you have proper utensils, in your bag, or whatever the case may be, so that when you get to a place, you can take the moment and you can get that hangnail right before you get going. Or if you work from home, take a moment and just, you know, get that taken care of, because what's going to happen is throughout the day, that little hangnail is going to get irritated. And beyond that, something's going to happen and you're going to rip that nail off and it's going to be worse than it should have been. That's a, kind of petty example, but it's something as small as that that can just blow the whole day and get you all off track because you didn't settle your mind and get clear. So take the time and just, figure out what your own strategy is. And so it may not be anything that I'm sharing, but it could be whatever it is, but some regular quiet time. I know for me, lighting a candle, that kind of thing in the mornings or even mid-afternoon or something like that, having on some music, whether that's, inspirational music, jazz, whatever. And a lot of times I like for it to be instrumental for sure, because I don't want there to be words. I just want to be able to let my mind flow. So figure out what works for you and make sure that you do that, because that's going to really be helpful. Now, if you have the time to write a journal, do some journaling in the morning, whatever that is. And then, in the evening, do some guided meditation, maybe with an app or video, or, have some type of awareness that kind of brings you back in sync, or where you can just at least reflect on your day. Because at the end of the day, when we take the time to kind of establish our patterns and see what we're doing, why we're doing it, that kind of thing, it really helps us to function a little bit better. Now, I could go on and on because that I think that's super, super important. The third thing, we have to identify what our priorities are. And then we want to um, have priorities and then set realistic goals. Sometimes what happens is that we are setting our priorities and our goals based on somebody else's framework of life and not our own. And so when we do that, what happens is we get a letdown because that's not even the lane we're supposed to be driving in. So we're driving in somebody else's lane. We're trying to accomplish some goals that we may not have the qualities and or abilities to do so. And then we're frustrated because we don't get the win. So it's important to identify your priorities based on who you are, which is why it's important to get clarity. It's so many people, I'm telling y'all, it is so many people that are not clear. So we go every day and it's like they're not clear about who they are. They're not clear about what their circumstances are. They're not clear about their situations because we don't take the time to really talk things through. We don't take the time to self-reflect so that we can confront things and make them better or make ourselves better. And so we're not clear. And I use this example all the time that even in bad situations, having clarity will make the situation better. I've had situations that have not been so wonderful. They've not been so great. But because I'm clear on who I am, what I'm supposed to be doing, I make decisions according to the level of clarity that I have. Now, that's parenthetically. Let me insert this. Clarity doesn't happen one time and you're done, and you don't have to worry about getting clear anymore. No, you got to continue to be clear. Clarity is a process. It is not a destination. And so it's a continuous thing. You have to do it over and over again. And so that's why you have to establish these things because these are the things that guide you to remaining clear. And so that clarity helps you to really be the compass for everyday living. It's the compass for everyday living. And so it's important that you determine where it is you're trying to go. What is it that you're aiming for? Why is it that you're aiming for that? And how is it that you're going to get there? Because if those things are not syncing up and they're not clear, there's going to be mental tragedy because it's going to be frustration and frustrating and your emotion be all over the place. Be like, okay, I set out to do this, ain't none of this working. Well, it ain't working because you didn't take the time to properly align yourself and make sure that you were clear about the decisions you were making. Okay. So let's just, set those priorities and those goals so that you can have wins. I don't care if you set for 3 wins and you only have one. Well, guess what? That one win is worth celebrating and it's a small victory along the way. And so it's important that we're able to celebrate those things because having small victories along the way is the thing that helps us to get through. And so if we can't do that, then it's going to be impossible for us to get to the next level in life. And so every so many years, well, now it feels like every few months is a shift. And so we have to be ready for the shift. And if we don't take the time to make sure that we're clear, we understand where we're going, we have a compass that's going to direct us and guide us, and that intuition is going to kick in, it's going to create a serious situation for us. So here again, once our values are clear, we pinpoint the areas that we want to focus on where life has the demand. What are the things that we need to do there? Break down our larger aspirations into smaller, actionable, and realistic goals. I'm telling you, it will work better. And you'll begin to have those small victories along the way. And you'll be able to, really then that gives you that confidence. That helps you to gain the confidence. The clarity is there. And so as the clarity is there and it gets clearer, then what happens? You gain the confidence. Every time you have a win, your confidence gets better because you understand that the framework that you set in place and the things that you're doing is actually working. And even if there are missteps and things don't actually work out the way you thought they do work out. And so what do then? You learn the lesson from whatever mistake or misstep that you made, and then you move it forward. So the next time you're in that position, you know what to do or you know what not to do, right? So oftentimes it's not so much about what learning to do, but oftentimes it's about learning what not to do. So I would just, strongly encourage taking the time, number one, to write. Y'all know I'm big on pen to paper. Write things down. And it doesn't have to be 4 or 5 pages, but you need to jot some things down. In one of my journals I have, it's the pen to paper journal, and it just talks about a guided process for writing vision, number one. And oftentimes you may not write or have a paragraph to write. But there may be a phrase that's on your mind or on your heart. There may be a word that comes to mind, and you want to drill down on that. Or there just may be something that pricked you, and so you just jot it down, jot or tittle. So that could be a word, it could be a phrase. Then you can come back later and you can expound upon that. But just take a moment every day, whether it's on your phone, however you do. But I would encourage writing because writing is therapeutic and cathartic. And not only that, when you write it down, it attaches to your heart. So that is important. And then establish your framework for getting those goals established. Once those priorities have been set, what does that do? That helps you to have a system, right? And so you recall me saying, I don't know if it was the previous session or a couple of sessions a few weeks ago, but one of the things that's important about having structure for our life, having strategies for our life, and having a system by which we conduct our life, our home, and that kind of thing. If something occurs and we get off track, it's easy for us to get back on track because we have a system, we have a structure, we have a strategy that we've been using. But when we're just kind of throwing things on the calendar and scheduling things here and that kind of thing, it's difficult for us to get back on track because we really don't have structure and a system that we're using to manage our lives. So think about that. So establish a framework, whatever that is. I have what's called a 5T strategy model. I can use that for pretty much anything that I'm doing. That means I'm going to talk it through, write stuff down. I'm going to task those things that I write down. I'm going to time how long I have to get it done. I'm going to track it and I'm going to trace it. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to keep up with it and monitor it to make sure I get there. And some things may be longer than others, but at the end of the day, I don't lose sight of it. And so that's what I use. But you can use SMART goals. You can, whatever you want to use. So that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. You can do a goal tree. You can do a mind map, whatever. You can do any of those things. You can do T notes, whatever works for you. But make sure you write it down somewhere. Attach the hand to some paper, and that's going to bring in your head and your heart because now you're going to be working to get those things accomplished. And that's what's important. So the other thing is number four. Got a couple of more minutes here. Simplify your life to the best of your ability. Because if you simplify your life to the best of your ability, you'll find that things will work a little smoother. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes we go the long way around and we make it harder than it needs to be. It takes longer because we're trying to work too many things into the process, but less is more. One of the things that is one of my quests for the end of this year is to simplify every aspect of my life to the best of my ability. That's in business, that's in my personal life, that's in other endeavors. I'm learning that less is more because when it's less, we have the ability, most in general, to internalize our process when it's less. So, you know, just reducing a lot of the things that I do that are not necessary to do, finding a simpler way and a simpler method to do it, determining a simple way to ensure that I'm moving every day. So that's my physical movement and that kind of stuff. How do I do that to make sure it gets in, but I don't have to make it a chore, right? So I establish 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or maybe 30 minutes, 15 early part of the day, 15 in the evening. But at the end of the day, making sure that I'm staying true to that because it doesn't take 2 hours. I can do 15 minutes and be impactful. 15 in the morning, 15 or sometime midday and 15 in the evening. Even my mental, making sure that I have a time parameter, boundaries for when I'm online in front of the computer, set boundaries. When I'm done with the task, get off, because a lot of times we're just working and creating. And for those of us that are creators, it's a real challenge. And so I'm having to set those boundaries for myself. The computer closes when I'm done. I do things as scheduled. So when it's scheduled time, I'm coming on and I'm doing what I need to do, and then I'm off, and then I prepare for the things I need to do the next day or whatever the cycle is. But reducing that mental stress. And then that helps to declutter the mind, and not only that, even our spaces. Less is more in our spaces. So I definitely got some challenges in there because I have all the creative things that I got to declutter the office because there are books and books and books and books and books. So there are a lot of different things, but I've got to determine how I am going to do that process so that less is more. And my environment allows me more space to be more clear, more focused, and have greater clarity. So whatever your process is going to be, and that's for your life, your mind, your spirit, your body, the whole nine. Determine what your framework's going to be. You want to be able to make good decisions, and look at some of the decisions you've been making. Do a decision audit, do a life audit. Just kind of take some time, write down some things. What have you been doing? We're in the seventh month, so the first 6 months, this is normally kind of the middle of the road. So this is where I normally kind of assess things. And it's my birthday month. So I'm getting ready to go into another year. And so I'm reviewing, I'm reflecting, and I'm thinking, and where I want to be, where I want to go, what I've done, what can I do differently, to simplify life, to simplify the processes and the things that I'm doing. I'm shifting, I'm changing, body's changing, mind's changing, all the things are shifting. So how do I want to move forward so that my mind and my spirit is healthier? Right. So determine what that's going to be for you. Establish what your framework's going to be. It could be a digital detox. It could be a decision audit. It could be a life audit. Um, there's so many different things that you can, do to assess yourself and write those things down. Because what you want to do is you want to give yourself a time frame to begin to work on those things so that you can get to the next level and accomplish those goals. And then the last one I'll touch on tonight is seek external perspectives. Get a coach. I have a coach. I have two coaches. Well, I have three coaches. So I have coaches that help me in various areas of my life. Um, have a mentor. Get in a group, be a part of a group. I have what's called the Vision Room. That is a coaching and mentoring group where I pour in and pour out, specifically helping people to gain clarity, to work through processes, to help them with their life endeavors, to help them with personal development, to help them to structure their lives, to help them with some private preparation for public presentation, right? Um, that's where I get to do the thing I've been called to do, to bless and be a part of what people are trying to do and to give my piece to that. And so that's an ongoing personal development program that is definitely open for any of you to participate in. But find you a place or group that you can connect so that you can have a community to really help you with some of these areas, and make sure it's a safe place, safe space, and a trusted community. That's important, so talking to people, talking through things, talking with a mentor, a coach can offer objective viewpoints, clarifying questions, and then provide guidance based on their experience. That's exactly what I do. So I take my experience and I utilize my experience to help others walk through the things that they're walking through. And then here again, determine a framework. What kind of schedule you're going to have for checking in? For the most part, all of the mentees in my group, they have a one-on-one coaching session every month, and then the group itself comes together twice a month. Well, that's the framework. That's the schedule for that particular environment. And so that gives people a couple of times a month and then a time in the middle or at the end of however they need it to have that one-on-one that's just about them. So it works out beautifully because it gives you that opportunity to have that connection. So definitely take the opportunity to think about, finding that clarity, establishing clarity, getting clear, and going to the next level, taking those steps, define your core values. Number two, mindful reflection. Just, do some self-reflection. That's going to be really, really good. Identify your priorities and then set realistic goals. Accomplish some things. If it's one thing a month, one thing a week, whatever that is, and then simplify your life. Declutter things in your mind, declutter things in your home, in your space. Help that space to be more conducive for what you need. And then seek external perspectives. Get you a coach, connect, get you a mentor, ask for constructive feedback. And then you need to be open for it, be ready for it. So don't take offense when people tell you what is the truth or what they actually see. That's their perspective. So you're asking for their perspective. So be open for that. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I just wanted to kind of start that conversation and get us going in that regard. And I hope that you've taken the opportunity to really think about clarity to prosperity. Because once we get clear, we can prepare ourselves for everything it is we need to do, whether that's writing a book, starting a business, better managing your life, better managing your finances, better managing your family. And so prosperity doesn't just mean money. It means wellness holistically. And so, and a wealthy life is not just a life with a lot of money. Wow. You know, it takes money to do what we do, but it also takes a mind that is spiritually rich. That can go a long way. So I encourage you to think about how your clarity can lead to prosperity. Are you clear enough to set the priorities and the goals you want to accomplish, and then realistically align those things, and then be in a position where you are have the abilities to be prepared and set in place the preparation you need for provision to take place, because in order for us to have provision, prosperity, we need to be prepared. So take the time, get clear so you can be prepared. Well, this has been Tuesday Motivation Conversation. I hope you've been motivated tonight, encouraged. I hope your mental state has been intrigued, and something I said it made you think about something. And if that's the case, and you went, I did my job tonight. All right. See you back here next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time for Motivation, Tuesday Motivation and Conversation. See you next time.